Republican Missouri Senator Eric Schmitt had a bit of a meltdown, threw a temper tantrum on George Stephanopoulos' program this week on Sunday when George Stephanopoulos pressed him on why he's claiming to know nothing about Trump pardoning the Honduran president who was convicted of drug trafficking.
Senator, let me just begin where we left off with Congressman Smith. Do you support this pardon of the former Honduran president?
I'm not familiar with the facts or circumstances, but I think what's telling here is to try to imply that somehow President Trump is soft on drug smuggling is just ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. He's provided border security like we've never seen before. And the fact is, these cartels now, because the southern border is closed, they've gone to the high seas. So President Trump is acting with his core Article 2 powers. No serious legal expert would doubt that the president has authority to blow narco-terrorists out of the water who are poisoning 100,000 Americans every year. If you watched the SEC championship game yesterday, the Big Ten championship game, combine those two stadiums with the number of people there, that's how many people are dying each and every year from the poison that's coming from these narco-terrorists. So the fact is, George, President Trump has been delegated the authority by Congress to designate terrorist organizations. He's done that. He sent a letter to Congress saying he was going to initiate these strikes. We've had regular briefings about it, including from Secretary of State Rubio, including from the high-ranking officials in the Department of Defense. He's executing those. And so now what we have now are Democrats who have such X-ray vision and clairvoyance that they know the intentions of narco-terrorists on boats, yet we're so blind to see that they had a president for 4 years that was operating as a vegetable in Joe Biden. So, forgive me if I'm a little skeptical that this isn't all about politics and trying to take out Secretary Hegseth. That's what this whole thing's been about, George. They didn't want him confirmed. They didn't want a realist in place. They didn't want to shift from their pet projects around the world and trying to build democracies in the sands of the Middle East by the barrel of a gun. We have core national interests at stake, the homeland in the Western Hemisphere, and the rise of China. That's what this administration is focused on. The Democrats are just upset about that, and they try to create some controversy each and every week, and it goes nowhere.
What do you mean you're not familiar with the facts and circumstances of the pardon? It's been well reported all across the country. He's the former president of Honduras. He was convicted of conspiring to bring in 400 tons of cocaine into the United States, also guns and other materials. It's been front page news across the country. Aren't you curious about that?
Well, I'm curious about your pushback on that particular point. With your previous guest, you had zero pushback because he's giving the Democrat talking points like you spew every single week, which is probably why your ratings are so bad. But to make the point, what I'm saying is that you're trying to divert here the attention from what the American people actually support. 75% of Americans support us blowing narco-terrorists out of the water in the Caribbean who are trying to poison Americans. There's no real legal debate about the ability to do that. Now, you could have a policy discussion about it, which now you see the Democrats pivoting from the second strike and the war crimes allegation to really what this whole thing is about. Should we be doing it in the first place? I have way more sympathy for my friends, my cousins, my neighbors, those people who've been poisoned by these narco-terrorists, people who've been skinned alive by these cartels as they bring people to the United States, than I do for these narco-terrorists. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. So there's legal justification for it. He's doing it. We do have more of a focus on our interests now in the Western Hemisphere, and I'm thankful for that.
Do you support the pardon of the convicted drug smuggler or not?
George, like I said, what we're talking about here are the narco-terrorists poisoning Americans. This attempt to try to focus on a pardon is classic because you've lost the debate now on the narco-terrorist question. Because at the beginning of the week, you had Democrats actually on camera saying, you should disobey orders. That's what Senator Kelly and Slotkin were saying. You should disobey orders. And then they went so far as to say that if you don't do that, you might get prosecuted down the road. It's hard to sort of overstate how problematic that is for the chain of command and what it is for a military. The Democrats had their shot at all this, and it was rejected. They wanted to have DEI struggle sessions in our military, transgender surgeries, recruitment was way down. The fact is, under President Trump and now Secretary Hegseth, recruitment is sky high, morale is sky high. They're upset about that because they had an agenda that said that America could be everywhere all at once all the time. Now we have a president that's a realist focusing on core national interests, including protecting Americans from being poisoned by the narco-terrorists.
Just to clarify, the Democrats you talked about were talking about illegal orders. They were specific about saying it was illegal orders that they were talking about.
Sure, but when you press them on what orders are they talking about, they had no answer, except to say that somehow they should be guessing along the way. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. And this is kind of the rabbit hole of Trump derangement syndrome, is that they can't let this thing go. They can't believe that he won. They didn't want Hegseth to be the Secretary of War. They fought it. He was their number one target. They failed at that. And so now you just have a series and series of issues that come up every week to try to undermine this president and the Secretary of War. And it's not working. They're going to carry out their mission. They executed another strike of a narco-terrorist just this past week. Those will continue, and they're completely authorized. I reviewed the 40-plus page memo by the Office of Legal Counsel. There's JAG officers in these rooms, George, every time there's a strike. So again, the narrative at the beginning of the week that this war crimes, that's clearly fallen away, and now the Democrats are peddling another lie.
Utterly insane that his last words there were another lie after spewing lie after lie. Utterly insane that Schmidt tries to attack George Stephanopoulos, tries to attack Democrats as spewing talking points to divert the American people's attention, literally while he's spewing talking points to divert the American people's attention away from the pardoning of the Honduran drug trafficking president. Utterly insane. If you feel like your head is spinning after watching Eric Schmitt talk about China, Joe Biden, Pete Hegseth being a realist, the Democrats who told soldiers not to listen to illegal orders, how the Democrats are just spewing talking points to distract the Americans, and they're lying, it's okay. The GOP and the Republican strategy is to do that to you, is to make you feel frustrated and make you feel like your head is spinning. What's probably most insane about Schmidt here, talking about how he doesn't know anything about the Honduran president's pardon, but also attacking George Stephanopoulos for not pressing his previous guest, not pushing back on his previous guest, is that his previous guest was Democrat ranking member in the House Armed Services Committee, Adam Smith, who spoke at great length to why the Honduran president's pardon is terrible for the United States of America. So Schmidt here is admitting that he just watched Adam Smith break this all down and then tries to pretend like he doesn't know anything about it. How stupid does Eric Schmitt think Americans are?
I want to ask you about the president's pardon of the former president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez. Of course, the pardon power is absolute. Congress has no recourse to stop it. But is there anything more the public needs to know about this? Can you think of any justification for the pardon?
No, I mean, I think what the public needs to know about this, and I also like to point out the pardon of Ross Ulbricht, the Silk Road crypto guy who was setting up a secret way of using crypto to basically launder billions of dollars in drug money. He was convicted of laundering drug money, and Trump pardoned him. Look, it seems like this isn't that much about drugs coming into the U.S. It's more about what Trump released with the national security strategy a couple days ago, 3 days ago now, where he wants to assert dominance over the Western Hemisphere. He wants to go back to the 19th century, where the U.S. does what it wants in the Western Hemisphere, the Monroe Doctrine. And look, that's disturbing. You know, for 80 years, we have tried to develop an international system that is based on law, a rules-based system. And Trump seems to want to smash that. And if he can go after Venezuela and go after Maduro, that's one way of doing it. The Honduras thing seems to have to do with the presidential election that's going on down there, and the party that supports Trump or the party that doesn't support Trump. So it seems to be much more about that than any legitimate desire to stop what, by the way, is a huge problem. Drugs in the U.S. are a huge problem, but they keep, just one more example, and this fentanyl is killing a lot of people. There's no fentanyl involved in what we're blowing up down in the Caribbean, even though the White House and others keep saying that. This is cocaine, which is a problem, but if you really wanted to get after this, you'd be putting pressure on China to stop the precursors, and you'd be putting pressure on Mexico where the fentanyl comes through. This seems to be much more about President Trump's world vision of the U.S. needing to dominate the hemisphere than it does about protecting Americans from the incredible problem that we have with drug overdoses and death.
Congressman, thanks for your time this morning.
The only thing I'll disagree with Adam Smith on here in this clip is that it's not really about Trump returning the U.S. to power in the hemisphere. It's about Trump returning Trump to power in the hemisphere. Trump doesn't care about the United States. He doesn't care about our government. He doesn't care about our rules or our laws. Trump just wants the power. Trump doesn't care about our country. Trump cares about himself. Now, Eric Schmitt here, pretending like he doesn't know what George Stephanopoulos is talking about, that he doesn't know the details of the Honduran president's pardon. That is the strategy of the Republican Party these days. If you've been watching Mike Johnson in his press briefings over the past few months, you would know that time and time again, he just uses that excuse. He just says, "Oh, I don't really know much about what's going on. I've been really busy." So that's part one of their strategy, right? Is to just flat out deny they know anything about it. That seems to work for Mike Johnson in these press briefings when he can just simply move on to another reporter. But when you're a Republican on a talk show like this and the interviewer decides to hold your feet to the fire, well, you have to turn to part B of the Republican Party strategy, and that's to just throw everything but the kitchen sink. And why the hell not? Just throw the kitchen sink in there to try to deflect from the fact that you're lying. And then I guess you could say the third part is to attack the interviewer. It's a simple formula, and that's what we've seen from Schmidt here. Claim you don't know anything about it, then throw everything but the kitchen sink, and I guess including the kitchen sink these days, at it, and then attack George Stephanopoulos and tell him he's got terrible ratings. It's a formula that it has been designed by the Republican Party, but is it working? I mean, we're seeing Donald Trump flailing in the polls. We're seeing Republicans getting beat in these special elections. We're seeing this blue wave mounting. So whether or not Republicans are going to try another strategy, I don't know, maybe criticize themselves once in a while, that's yet to be seen. But it kind of seems like if they follow this formula over the next year, things are not going to go well for them. Let me know what your reflections are down in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to Reflect Politics so you get my future videos delivered straight to you if you haven't already. And if you don't know who I am, my name is Brendan Plank. I run Reflect Politics. So thanks for clicking on the video. Thanks for watching. Thanks for interacting and sharing your reflections. I'll see you in the next one.